I am K. Venkateswarlu, lecturer in history, Government Degree College, Medak. Today I am going to discuss about socio-economic and cultural conditions during the Delhi Sultanate. Everybody knows about the Delhi Sultanate. The Sultanate was founded in the year AD 1206 by Qutbuddin Aibak. Qutbuddin Aibak was a governor of, or he was a subordinate of Muhammad Ghori. The Delhi Sultanate, which was founded in the year 1206 AD as a capital of Delhi, and it was overruled from 1206 AD to 1526 AD. During this period from 1206 to 1526, the Delhi Sultanate was ruled by the different dynasties. First dynasty, slave dynasty. The slave dynasty was started from AD 1206 to 1290. Second dynasty, Khilji dynasty, it was ruled from 1290 to 1320. Third, Tughlaq dynasty from 1320 to 1413. Fourth dynasty, Sayyid dynasty from AD 1413 to 1451. Last dynasty, Lodis dynasty from 1451 to 1526. This is called Delhi Sultanate. The Delhi Sultanate reign started from 1206 AD to 1526 AD. During their rule, so many changes took place in their administration. Their rule had far-reaching effects on the Indian society. Their rule was affected on Indian social conditions and economic conditions, on cultural conditions. Now we are going to discuss about the social conditions during the Delhi Sultanate. During Delhi Sultanate, the society was virtual division of the society. The society mainly it was divided into Hindus and Muslims. Hindus and Muslims, they were vertically divided. But after Mauryas, Indo-Greeks and Bactrians, Indo-Greeks or Bactrians, Parthians and Kushans, they invaded on India and they established their dynasties and they merged into the Indian culture and they treated India as their motherland. But during the Delhi Sultanate, the Muslims and Hindus were, I think they were, both were divergent, and both communities lived with separate identity. During that period, Muslims, they are protecting their own identity and their culture. During the process of during the reign of Delhi Sultanate, the Muslim rulers converted the Hindus into Islam, resulting in some Hindus becoming Muslims by the forcible conversions of the Muslim rulers. During this time, even though some of the Hindus converted into the Muslims, the majority and a large portion of the population continue to be as Hindus. During this time, the two communities Muslims and Hindus were distinct distinct from one another, living together for several years in the same villages or towns brought about some understanding and tolerance between the Hindus and Muslims. And some of the Muslims practiced the local customs and traditions, and the Hindus also participated in the functions and festivals of the Muslims. Then the Muslims also participated and understanding the Hindus culture and Hindus traditions. But even though both were living with divergent separate communities during the Delhi Sultanate, and this during this time both Muslims and Hindus living with mutual cooperation and communal harmony during the Delhi Sultanate. Now we are going to discuss about the classes among the Muslims. During the Delhi Sultanate, the Muslims were divided into three parts. One, nobility, and second one, merchants, and the third one, artisans. These three divisions among the Muslim community consisted during that time. The nobility and the merchants consisted of many foreign Muslims only, but the artisans were the mainly Indians. Although theoretically there was no caste distinctions among the Muslims, only all Muslims were treated as equal. In practice, the Muslims of foreign origin did not mingle with the converted Indian Muslims. Now we are going to discuss about the some sections of the Muslims in India resulted in addition some of the more sections and subsections we come across in Indian context. Among the Muslims, foreign Muslims constituted the ruling class, and it was the most respected and the privileged section of the society. And all rights they are having, the foreign Muslims having high all rights, and they enjoyed with high offices in the state, and they kept reserved for them. They received extensive jagirs in return for their services, and they yielded great influence in society and administration. But the foreign Muslims were also not united. But I think during the Delhi Sultanate, they belonged to different nationalities, such as among the Muslim sects, they belong to some of the nationalities such as Persians, the Afghans, the Arabs, the Turks, the Abyssinians, and etc. During this period, the Turks claimed and maintained their superiority over all others up to the 13th century. When the Khiljis captured the power of the state, the superior position of the Turks was broken, and different sections of foreign Muslims came on par with the another. And the Indian Muslims, they were either those Hindus who were themselves converted to Islam, or were descendants of such converted Muslims. The Indian Muslims were not given equal status with foreign Muslims, either in society and administration. Therefore, there was some improvement in their status from the beginning of the 14th century, yet they could never claim equal with foreign Muslims. In the India, the foreign Muslims in all spheres, they have enjoyed a lot They have enjoyed a lot in the sense of powers and privileges and administrative positions. But Indian Muslims, they never treated as equivalent. Now we are going to discuss about the slave system during the Delhi Sultanates. During this period, the slave system was prevalent both among the Muslims and the Hindus, and slaves were sold and purchased in open markets. The slaves were both communities were they purchased and sold the slaves in the society. The slaves of the Muslims were better off as compared to the slaves of the Hindus. To compare with Hindu slaves, Muslims slaves position was better, and the the Delhi Sultanates and nobles their kept slaves in large numbers and provided them education and gave them training and opportunities to rise in their lives, so that many of them rose to the position of eminence in the state. Some of the Delhi Sultanates, they provided good education and good training and opportunities to their slaves for better position, for better capacity, better position to of eminence, to enhance their capacity for serving the administration and different capacities. And position of Hindus during Delhi Sultanates, the Sultanate was a theocracy. The Hindus occupied an inferior position in the society. The Muslims occupied high position in the society, in the administrative positions and social status. To compare with the Hindus, Muslims were in high position. They were called the Hindus, they kept down, and they were called Jamins, or the people under the contract of protection. As Hindus, they had to pay all religious taxes to the government, like jizya tax, and generally the Hindus were not given the top post in the administration, government administration. Although Delhi Sultanates did not follow such extremely fanatical policy toward the Hindus, during Delhi Sultanate, it can be definitely stated that the Hindus were not treated as equal to the Muslims by the Delhi Sultanates. During the Delhi Sultanates, in all dynasties, the Hindus are not treated with the equivalent to the Muslims in all capacities, like administrative posts and other benefits and taxes exemption, all the things. Next, position of women during the Delhi Sultanate, the Hindus, among the Hindus as well as the Muslims, the birth of daughters were disliked. The both communities not welcoming the birth of daughters. The birth of daughters was disliked, and preference was shown to the male children. That indicates the inferiority status which women had in the society. The male had superiority in the society. The women had no freedom and were kept secluded, and some of the families following the system of parda system, and parda system existed both among the both sects, religions, Hindus and Muslims, and women were kept in the janana or separate apartments, and outside which they were not allowed to appear, except in parda they appeared. Regarding the status of women, Amir Khusru described about the position of women. Amir Khusru, in his advice to his daughter, asks her not to leave the thread of the spinning wheel and always to keep her face towards the wall of the house and her back towards the door so that nobody would be able to look at her. Muslim women were not allowed to visit the tombs of holy men outside the city. The practice of the sati and jawhar were widely prevalent in the Hindu communities and Rajput communities. These sacrifices of women were admitted. Amir Khusru described sati as a noble practice, and Ibn Battuta witnessed the sati on many occasions and gives details of such sacrifices. During the Delhi Sultanates, according to the foreign travelers, foreign accounts, the sati system and Johar practice existence in the Hindu Rajput communities. And now we would like discuss about, now I am going to discuss about the Hindu society degenerated during this period. Scholars like Ishwari Prasad believe that Hindu society during the period was degenerated. It's exclusively pride and self conceit are cited as evidence for their degeneration. The thinking of the Hindus that they know everything and that all others were mlechus. The highly Hindus, they are more intelligent with the others, with foreigners. To Mechlus means impure people, is also mentioned as an example for the degeneration of the Hindu society. But the exclusiveness, branding others as mechus, the mechlus or prohibition of sea voyages and such other practices were a reaction to the attack of the foreigners on the Hindu society. Loss of political freedom and power definitely weakened the Hindus, but the society did not remain static. To meet the to meet the challenges, the society adapted new customs and traditions and thereby proved that it was not stagnant. Oh, these are all the social conditions which were existed during the Delhi Sultanate. Now I am going to discuss about the economic conditions. What type of economic conditions existed during the Sultanate? During the Sultanate, the economic system of the Delhi Sultanate was feudal in nature, and the nobility who owned vast lands had great social prominence because of their economic prosperity. The village was the basic economic unit during the Delhi Sultanate. It was a self-sufficient system and production in the villages was largely for local consumption. During that period, the all Indian villages are indigenous. The techniques and instruments of production were primitive, but they served the purpose of limited production. The craftsmen in the villages were organized into distinct professions. In course of time, gradually towns began to flourish during that period, and with the increase in the towns, production in villages increased, and because the villagers were met produced food grains to the town's population during that time, and internal trade expanded. In the towns also, artisans lived and production was carried on. Certain towns specialized during that period in the production of goods for export. The towns in Gujarat, we will see the towns Gujarat and Bengal produced a variety of textiles like white cotton, silk, velvet, satin, and quoits. The Cambay cotton was famous for its quality and cheapness during that time. Every town had a marketplace where merchants and consumers gathered for goods selling and supplying supplying that time. During that time, fairs were held regularly for purposes of trade. In the course of the travelers during that period, travels in India during the period 1333-46, Ibn Battuta found the big cities with rich markets in the Gangetic Valley and Malwa, Gujarat, Bengal, Deccan, and Malabar. Among all the sultans of Delhi Sultanate, Alauddin Khilji showed much interest in common matters. He introduced a number of reforms in the economic sphere. The most important of his reforms was the control of the prices, because he fixed the prices of all the commodities and took effective steps to see that the merchants sold the goods only at the prices fixed by the government. The objective of the Alauddin Khilji, his economic reforms indicates, was to enable the soldiers to live happily within the salary which they got. All merchants had to register their names with the government to carry on trade, and they implement the economic measures of the Sultan, and two top officials were functioned and look after all the market reforms which were introduced by the Alauddin Khilji. Those officials, Diwan-i Riyasat and Shahana-i Mandi, were appointed by the Alauddin Khilji to look after his market reforms to functioning effectively during that time. The merchants who sold the goods at higher prices and those who did not follow the regulations of the government were severely punished by the Sultan, like Alauddin Khilji. Next, I am going to discuss about the agrarian or agriculture during the Delhi Sultanate. During the Delhi Sultanate, a large number of people depended on agriculture, and agriculture was the main livelihood of the agrarian people. According to the foreign travelers who visited during the period India, during this period agriculture was flourishing in many parts of the country, and there was a practicing food crops, and they produced from agriculture food crops and commercial crops and vegetables and fruits and gardens were grown in plenty. According to the Ibn Battuta wrote that the fertility of the soil helped for high production in the agriculture field, and the and during this time the irrigational facilities also provided by the rulers, and rulers stimulated growth in the agriculture field, and during that time rulers developed మన irrigational facilities to the agriculturists and to the people for getting more production through the agriculture, because agriculture was the main livelihood of the major population. Now I am discuss about the irrigation and public works. During the Delhi Sultanate, the sultanates improved agriculture. They undertook many irrigational schemes. Canals were dug during that period. The most important of them was 150-mile canal running from the Yamuna to the city of Hisar. It was a very largest canal during the Delhi Sultanate period, and about 150 they dug 150 wells were sunk, both for the irrigation and for the purpose of travelers, and they cultivated wastelands were brought into cultivation. As a result of wasteland cultivation, there was no scarcity of food grains in the state. During that time, the rulers protected the interests of the farmers and some kings won the titles the friend of the farmers, because the rulers closely associated with the farmers, and they took number of measures for the uplift of the farmers, and they tried to improve the production of the agriculture crops and all the depending sector of the agriculture. And about the and during that time, there was a great builder and a great gardener also. The number of Delhi Sultanate kings, they were trying builder and a great gardener also. The rulers builds new cities, buildings and palaces and mosques, schools and hospitals, rest houses, etc. According to the Ferista, he constructed not less than 845 public works. He mentioned one of the great Delhi Sultanate ruler constructed not less than 845 public works. He founded the cities of Jannur and Faridabad, Hisar and Firozabad, etc. He was a lover of gardener too, and he restored 30 old gardens of Alauddin and laid 1200 new gardens in the vicinity of Delhi Sultanate. These gardens served not only as a beauty spots but also as a source of income. During that time, gardens also played a key role in the economic aspect. Gardens also caused for the improving of the state economic status. And he brought two Ashoka pillars to Delhi. Alauddin Khilji brought to the Ashoka pillars to Delhi, and one from Meerut and other from Thopra. And now I am going to discuss about the industries during the Delhi Sultanate. During the Delhi Sultanate, they developed industries all over country during the region. During Delhi Sultanate, the textile industry was the most important industry in the country, and there was a number of textile and important factories, industries established in the places Gujarat and Bengal were the both places were the famous for the cloth manufacturing during the Delhi Sultanate. In Gujarat, the city of Cambay was well known for its fine and cheap cloth during that time. The cloth of Cambay was exported to many foreign countries. Bengal was famous for the abundance and variety of fine textiles. Also, it was a famous place during that time. And during that time, for textiles all over India and other countries having good markets in India and foreign countries. During that time, Malabar, the town of Sheliat near Calicut, was famous for its cotton fabrics. And during that time, textile industry, there was a industries also for the production of luxury goods and household articles. Not only textiles, and the industries produced production was produced luxury goods and items and household articles which were useful in the daily life of the and noble persons and common people. And during that time, manufacture of jewelry, ivory goods and carpets and other articles attract the attention of the foreign travelers, also inspired by the production of the valuable things during that time. During that time, Gujarat, which was famous for the textile industry, was equally famous for the production of the luxury goods that are mentioned already in the above. And during that time, I think during the reign of Alauddin Khilji, and he reformed that revenue administration to augment the resources of the state. He introduced for the first time the system of measuring the land for fixing the revenue, because land revenue was the main source for the highest revenue to the state treasury. That's why Alauddin Khilji measuring and fixing the land revenue. All the lands were confiscated by the state, which was hitherto enjoyed by the nobles, etc. I think Alauddin Khilji, during the time he was collected the tax. During that time, the rulers were given lands to the officials, but Alauddin Khilji, these lands were not given to the soldiers, and he given to the cash as cash to the employees as salary. And during that time, the nobles and they're having inams and pensions, etc. And during the Alauddin Khilji, the land tax was fixed at 1/2 of the grass production for the Hindus, and he collected from the Muslims 1/4 from the grass production. Besides, a number of other taxes also levied, collected, like grazing tax, house tax, and number of other taxes also collected from the public. And Alauddin Khilji, during his reign, he was removed the revenue department, and he was created the office of the Mastakaraz. From Alauddin Khilji, the land revenue department was removed, and he also introduced the post of Amirs to collect the land revenue from the peasants directly. Alauddin Khilji increased the salaries of the employees to reduce the corruption, and introduction the periodical audit of account. And he gave relief to the peasants by doing away with the corrupt and highly exploiting middlemen like Kutu and Chaudharis and Mukamdams. They are all the previously they are all the mediators, and Alauddin Khilji, he gave opinion to the peasant to pay tax either in cash nor in kind. He abolished the hated land farming method. Now I am going to discuss about the inland trade. During the Delhi Sultanates, the Sultanates trade provided the livelihood for many people in the society. In fact, it was a contributed to the prosperity of the several people. They are taking steps for improvement of the communications and communications like roads and bridges, and the rulers helped the growth of trade. During the Delhi Sultanate, one factor which was hindrance to the growth of trade was the presence of thieves in trade routes. During the time, the capital cities were important centers of trade. During the Delhi Sultanate, Delhi was described by the Ibn Battuta as the most magnificent city in the Muslim world, not only because of its and buildings and political importance, but because of the existence of large scale trade. They encouraged the Vaishya community and Marwadis in Gujarat and Rajasthan, and the Muslims controlled the trade during that time. The Banjaras were roaming traders with large caravans that were used for the transport of goods, and peddlers going from house to house to sell their articles also existed in those days of Delhi Sultanate reign. Now foreign trade. During the Delhi Sultanate, they encouraged extensively foreign trade, and there was a foreign trade with foreign countries. In enthusiastically, the rulers were encouraged, particularly the foreign trade with Asian countries, during this period, and number of Indian trade centers, Goa, Calicut, Cochin, and Cambay were the important seaports from where foreign trade was carried on. The important items of exports were pepper, cloves, ginger, and other spices, sugar, rice, coconuts, and cloths. During that time, the important items of imports were horses, dry fruits, salt, copper, and sulfur. During that time, the foreign trade was mostly in the hands of the Muslims, the nobility of the Muslims. They were either foreign or semi-foreign Muslims, who had come to India from Persia and the Arab countries to carry on trade between India and foreign countries. Mostly the foreign Muslims and semi-foreign Muslims were closely associated with foreign trade during that time. And these Muslims who almost had a monopoly on foreign trade, because they were very prosperous, they were very privileged section, they were very powerful section in the society. That's why they have monopoly on the foreign trade. During that time, extensively the foreign trade resulted in the increased use of coins. The jital and the tanka were the most frequently used coins during that time. The jital was a copper coin and the tanka was a silver coin. It was the standard monetary units of the Delhi Sultanates. They used these coins in the trade as a mode of transaction. Now I am going to discuss about the promotion of the learning and literature during the Delhi Sultanates. During the Delhi Sultanates, some of the benevolent rulers they shown they were very much interested in the promotion of learning, and some of the rulers they found in the east of the Delhi Sultanates. It was under the patronage the Barani and Shams I Siraz Arif wrote their works, and Delhi Sultanates during their reign, during their administration, they established number of schools, many schools, colleges, and mosques and monasteries for the promotion of the education and endowed them handsomely. For the sake of awakening of the public and awareness of the public throughout the country, they established number of schools and colleges and number of educational institutions. And during that time, the sultanates caused for the translation of 300 Sanskrit works to be translated into the Persian language. Alauddin Khilji also maintained a magnificent court at Delhi, and some of the benevolent and merciful and generous reforms which ushered as an era of peace and prosperity in the kingdom. And writers like Eliot and Elphinstone considered him as the Akbar of the Sultanate period. And during the Delhi Sultanates, all the great qualities and brilliant benevolent reforms were outweighed by some of his defects. He was over merciful, most respected, and less feared. The defects in his administration and framing of taxes and jagir system, jizya taxes, religious intolerance, lack of military and genius and heredity in military services, etc., created the fall of the Tughlaq dynasty and of the Delhi Sultanate. During the Delhi Sultanate, the rulers were patronized the art and literature, and that always trying to improve the literature during that period. Now I am going to discuss about the general condition of the people of the society and what were the conditions of the ordinary people during that time. During the time, the general common people, and during the Delhi Sultanate period was prosperity. The accounts of the foreigners who visited during the time various parts of the India and country testifies to the abundant wealth in the country. And Barbosa also, he was a foreign traveler, visited India during the Delhi Sultanates, And Barbasa refers to the affluent life of the people in Gujarat. He stated that in the Gujarat that the houses there were well furnished, and that people used wear silk and cloth and adorn themselves with precious ornaments. The people in the Gujarat, they wear costly silk cloths and wear the costly ornaments also. And Malwa was also referred by him as an area of high prosperity during that time. And the Chinese traveler Wang Tairan of China was visited, he was visited during the 14th century. He wrote in his book that 9 out of 10 people going to Orissa for trade from other countries did not like to return because of the cheap people going because of the cheap living there. Another Chinese writer, Mahuan, who was in India at the beginning of the 15th century, notes that the period Bengal was also prosperous, and Ibn Battuta wrote that prices of commodities in Bengal were cheaper than in any other country which he had visited. These are the conditions of the general population, general people during the Delhi Sultanate. And however, it must be noted that in the midst of the plenty, there was also poverty. The prosperity referred to by the foreigners was mostly confined to the higher classes in the society. The people of the lower classes, particularly the artisans, laborers, and other, did not enjoy the comforts and luxurious of the wealthy people. Only poor people living with simple life to compare with the higher classes. They had to be contented with the bare necessities of life. The society consisted of only two classes, the rich and poor. During the Delhi Sultanate, society was consisted poor and rich, only two classes. The middle class did not exist. Both Indian and foreign writers like Shams Shiraz, Ibn Battuta, and Athantis Nikitin were struck by the disparity that existed between the luxurious life of the rich and the poor one hand, and the miserable existence of the common people of the other. These are all the general common people conditions during the Delhi Sultanate. According to the foreign travelers, they clearly mentioned about the rich and poor people livelihood and their status and their conditions during the Delhi Sultanate. Now I am going to discuss about the architecture. Architecture, I think Delhi Sultanate architecture made good progress during the Delhi Sultanate. They patronized, they encouraged the sultanates and their provincial governors, and contemporary rulers also patronized and developed and contributed a lot to the development of the architecture. During the Delhi Sultanate, the architecture of this period can be divided into three categories. Number one, The first is the Delhi style, second one is the provincial style, third one is the Hindu architecture. The first one, the Delhi style of architecture, which grew under the patronage of sultans of Delhi. It includes all those buildings which were constructed by the sultans. Second one, the other is the provincial style of the architecture, which grew under the patronage of provincial ruling dynasties, which were mostly Muslims. Third one is the Hindu architecture, which mostly developed under the Hindu kings of Rajasthan and the Vijayanagara Empire. Rajasthan and Vijayanagara rulers are the contemporaries of the Delhi Sultanates. However, the distinction between these styles of architecture is only for the sake of convenience. Otherwise, the period witnessed the growth of that style of architecture, which as a whole can be called the Indo-Islamic architecture. The style of architecture was neither as a whole can be called the Indo-Islamic architecture. The style of architecture was neither purely Islamic nor purely Hindu. It was rather influenced by both the styles and therefore fairly deserves to be called the Indian architecture of the period of the Delhi Sultanates. Several factors contributed towards the formation of this Indo-Islamic architecture. First, the Turk-Afghan rulers had to employ Indian craftsmen who had their own ideas about the form and method of construction. Second one, during the Delhi Sultanate, the early period of their rule, the Muslims used materials of destroyed Hindu temples, palaces, etc. in the construction of their building, of simply covered them to suit their purposes. Thirdly, both Hindus and Islamic architecture were inherently decorative through of course their forms of decoration differed. While the Hindus decorated their buildings with images of different gods and goddesses, the Muslims decorated them with parallel, rectangular, square or triangular lines, stones of different colors of teaching of the Quran, inscribed mostly in the Persian script. Thus, architectural styles of both were ornamental. Therefore, Hindu style of architecture largely influenced Islamic style because of these unavoidable factors and gave birth to that mixed style which has been called the Indo-Islamic architecture. Now we broadly discuss about the architectural categories. First, Delhi style of architecture. The Delhi style of architecture, first patronized by the Qutbuddin Aibak. He was constructed the Qutb Islam Mosque at Delhi and another mosque at Ajmer called the Dai Din Ka Jonpara. Both these mosques have the importance of Hindu and Muslim art. The construction of the Qutb Minar was originally planned by Qutbuddin Aibak, but it was completed by Iltutmish. Its fourth story was damaged by lighting during the reign of Firoz Tughlaq, who replaced it by two smaller ones and raised its heights to 7128 meters. Besides completing the Qutub Minar, Iltutmish constructed a tomb on the grave of his eldest son known as Sultan Gur, nearly 5 kilometers away from the Qutub Minar. He also built House I Hamshi Idgah, the Jami Masjid, and Badan and Atarkin Ka Darwan at Jodhpur. Balban also built the Red Palace in Delhi, and among Alauddin Khilji constructed some beautiful buildings during his reign. His buildings were constructed with perfectly Islamic viewpoint, and he founded the city of Siri, built a palace of 1,000 pillars. Within it, Jamia Khan Mosque as the shrine of Nizamiya Auliya, and the famous Alsari Darwan near the Qutub Minar in the Delhi. His city and palace were destroyed, but the Jamait Khan Mosque and the Alai Darwaja also still exist, which have been regarded as beautiful specimens of Islamic art during the Delhi Sultanates. During the Tughlaq Sultans did not construct beautiful buildings. Probably the primary cause it was their economic deficient, because Muhammad bin Tughlaq has introduced number of reforms. Due to the reforms, his treasury faced number of deficient problems. Due to that, during the Tughlaqs, they didn't patronize, they didn't construct any architectural monuments during their reign. And Ghiyazuddin Tughlaq constructed the new city of Tughlaqabad, coast of the Qutub area, his own tomb and palace. However, during the Delhi Sultanates, his palace and city stand destroyed, while his tomb, constructed of red stone, lacks of the splendor. Muhammad Tughlaq constructed the new city of Jahana Pakh near the city of Old Delhi. The fort of Adilabad and some other buildings also constructed at South Daulatabad. And his all buildings have been destroyed right now. The remains of only two buildings, the Satyapalghat and the Bijay Mandal, are found. Firoz Tughlaq also constructed many buildings, but all of them were ordinary and weak. Among of these notable buildings were the new city of the Firozabad near the old city of Delhi, the palace of forts known as the Kotla Feroz Shah. Within it, a college and his own tomb also built at Huz-Ki-Ha. Among the all buildings were constructed by the Lodis and Sayas. Some notables are the tombs of Mubarak Shah, Sayyid Shah, and Muhammad Shah Sayyid and Sikandar Lodi, and a mosque also known. They constructed a mosque known as Afoti Ki Masjid by the Prime Minister of Sikandar Lodi at Delhi. Now we will discuss about the provincial style of the architecture during the Delhi Sultanates. The Muslim rulers and provinces also built up palaces, tombs, and forts and mosques, etc. In their kingdom, primarily the provincial style drew inspiration from the Delhi style of architecture. They influenced by the all provincial governors were the influenced by the Delhi style of architecture. But as the economic resources of provincial rulers were limited, were narrow, due to that they could not provide that a grandeur to their buildings as was provided by the sultans of Delhi. Besides, the local circumstance also influenced the provincial styles, and therefore the provincial architecture differed not only from the Delhi style but also from another architectural styles. Among the buildings of the provincial architecture constructed in Bengal and prominent ones one are in Adina Masjid built by the Sikandar Shah at Panduva, the Eklati Museum at Hajat Panduva, the Lotan Masjid and the Bari Sona Masjid at Gaur, the Kodami Rasul at Gaur built by Nausar Shah, the Delhi Darwaja at Gaur, and the tomb of Jalaluddin Muhammad at Panduva. The principal feature of the Bengal style of architecture were used the pointed arches on pillars, Hindu decorative design and adaptation of Hindu architectural to Islamic art. Yet the Bengal style of architecture remained inferior to other provincial states. The rulers of Sharghai dynasty at Jaunpur, they greatly patronized architecture, and some good buildings were raised during their rule with possessed certain good features of both Hindu and Islamic architectures. The silent features of the buildings raised here were square pillars, small galleries, and absence of minarets. Among the buildings constructed by the Sharaki rulers are the Atala, completed by Ibrahim Shah Sharaki, the Jami Masjid built by the Hussain Shah, and the Lal Darwaja Mosque, which are good specimens of provincial architectural styles. The buildings constructed in Malwa closely resembled those which were constructed by the sultans of Delhi. The fort of Mandu has been regarded as a beautiful protected city. The most notable building of Mandu are the Jama Masjid, the Hindola Mahal, the Asaf Mahal, the Jahaz Mahal, and the places of Baz Bahadur and his queen Rabmati buildings in Malwa have their own distinct style and occupy a respective places among the architectural styles of the provincial architecture during the Delhi Sultanate period. And Gujarat, we will see in the Gujarat also provided the best combination of Hindu and Islamic architectural and beautiful buildings were raised there during the Delhi Sultanate. Most notable buildings of Gujarat are the Jami Masjid of Cambay, the Jami Masjid and the tomb of Ahmad Shah at Ahmednagar, the Teen Darwaja, the Ranika Hujra, and the Dulka Masjid. Ferguson described the Jami Masjid of Ahmedabad as one of the most beautiful mosques in the East. It was described Jama Masjid by Ferguson. And besides, the city Champaner contains many beautiful buildings, and the mosque built by the Muhammad Begarta. Ferguson regarded it architecturally the finest of the Gujarat. And then the rulers of Bahmani kingdom in South India. The Bahmani kingdom, everybody knows, it was founded in the year 1347 by the Hassan Gangu Bahmani, Gulbarga as the capital. And Bahmanis, I think Bahmanis rule from Bahmanis started their rule from the year 1347. The rulers of different states, Bahmani sultans, Bahmani kingdom, and afterwards Bahmanis, the rulers of the different states of the Deccan, in which the Bahmani kingdom was paralleled out, also constructed splendid buildings within their territories in the south, in the Deccan. The most notable building among them are the mosques at Bidar and the Gulbarga, and in Gulbarga, the tomb of Muhammad Adil Shah as the Gold Gumbaz, and the Chand Minar at Daulatabad. These are constructed by the Bahmanis and other rulers during the Delhi Sultanate. Constructed, they followed the provincial architectural styles. Now I am discussing about the Hindu architectural styles. During the Delhi Sultanates, the Hindus could maintain their political existence in North India only, in Rajasthan, and therefore there alone we find specimens of Hindu architecture during the Delhi Sultanate. Of course, the Vijayanagara Empire, which was established in the year 1336 in the south, later on revived the glory of the Hindus, and beautiful architectural edifices were raised by their rulers within the territory of their empire. But the Battle of Thalikota sealed their fate, and most of the buildings and temples of Vijayanagara were destroyed. In the Battle of Thalikota, the Thalikota battle found in between Vijayanagaras and Bahmani Sultans. In the battle, the glorious architectural place of Hampi was totally destroyed after the Battle of Thalikota by the Muslims, by the Bahmani Sultans. However, one among those which were left is the right now the Vitijala temple, which was constructed by the great Vijayanagara king, the Sri Krishna Devaraya, and the rest of the notable buildings constructed by the Hindus are found only in Rajasthan, and Ranakumbha of Mewar built many forts, palaces, and their buildings. The best known among them being the Kirti Stambhas, also they constructed in the north during that time under the Hindu architectural styles. It has been regarded as the most remarkable tower in the country. Many other forts and places were built by the Rajput rulers at different places in the North India. The forts have existed, but most of the palaces have perished right now, not existent. All the Hindu architectural styles of monuments and temples and important constructions all perished right now. And the Hindus, no doubt, learned something about the art of construction from the Muslims, but kept their architectural style free from the influence. Therefore, their Hindu architectural buildings maintained their separate entity and were different from the buildings of the Muslim rulers. Muslims. In the south, the rulers of Vijayanagara further elaborated the arts of constructing gopurams. In the Hindu architectural styles, the South Vijayanagara kings, they followed new styles, new architectural styles. They introduced new styles like gopurams, and gateways of temples, and different architectural styles they introduced in the construction of the temple buildings. And different rulers also constructed mandapas over temples, which have been regarded as fine specimens of Hindu architectural styles. Thus, the Muslims and the Hindus both participated in the enrichment of the Indian architecture. It led to the progress of architecture during the period of Delhi Sultanate. During the Delhi Sultanate, the three architectural styles they followed. One architectural style, Delhi style of architecture. Second, the provincial architecture. Third one, the Hindu architecture. But lastly, the Hindu architecture, influenced by the Vijayanagaras, they introduced new styles in the temple architecture. They constructed with mandapas and gopurams and gateways. During the Delhi Sultanate, the temple architecture and other architectures, for the patronage of the architecture and the evolution of the architecture, both styles were caused for the architectural styles during the Delhi Sultanate. Now I am going to concluding the socio and economic and cultural conditions during the Delhi Sultanate from the AD 1206 to 1526. The society was vertically divided into Hindus and Muslims during the Delhi Sultanate. And during the Delhi Sultanate, the economic system was feudal in nature, and a number of landlords and noble families having the major lands in the uh, in the in the country. And in general, in the Delhi Sultanate, the society was divided into poor and rich, and during the Delhi Sultanate, they developed architecture in the three categories. One was Delhi architecture, and second one provincial architecture, and the third one Hindu architecture. These are the main contents, main effects on the Indian culture during the Delhi Sultanate. Okay, now I am going to concluding the lesson.